Hello, and welcome to My Career in Data, a podcast where we discuss with the industry leaders and experts how they have built their careers. I'm your host, Shannon Kemp, and today we're talking to Karina Blackman from GrainCorp.
With a robust catalog of courses offered on demand and industry-leading live online sessions throughout the year, the DATAVERSITY Training Center is your launchpad for career success. Browse the complete catalog at training.dataversity.net and use code DVTalks for 20% off your purchase.
Hello and welcome. My name is Shannon Kemp, and I'm the Chief Digital Officer at DATAVERSITY, and this is My Career in Data, a DATAVERSITY Talks podcast dedicated to learning from those who have careers in data management, to understand how they got there, and to talk with people who help make those careers a little bit easier. To keep up to date in the latest in data management education, go to dataversity.net/subscribe. Today, we are joined by Karina Blackman, Master Data Governance Manager at GrainCorp. And normally, this is where a podcast host would read a short bio of the guest, but in this podcast, your bio is what we're here to talk about. Karina, hello and welcome.
Hi, Shannon. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm excited to hear your story. So let's dive in here. You are the Master Data Governance Manager at GrainCorp. So tell me, for those who may not know, what type of business is GrainCorp?
Yeah, so GrainCorp is an agribusiness operating as an integrated end-to-end supply chain across grains and oilseed network. So we have a large network of storage, handling, and processing assets across Australia. The business connects growers to domestic and global markets through bulk exports, also through feed and processing and energy-related products like biofuels. So it's a very complex supply chain network operating at a global scale. But what makes it a really exciting company is its strong focus on innovation and modernization within the agribusiness space. So particularly how technology and data are being used to support and improve the way the business operates, which obviously is what excites me as a data professional.
Oh, very nice. So as a Master Data Governance Manager, what is it you do?
At a high level, my role is around creating clarity with what I would say is the company's most important data, master data, particularly as the organization is modernizing our core systems. So what I do day to day isn't managing the data, the business does that, but my role is a fairly newly created role and was brought in to help define who owns what data, what good looks like in terms of how we use the data, and then how decisions about data are made, how we make those decisions. So as we implement our new systems, which we're in the process of doing at the moment, we're not just moving data, but we're really understanding how it's used and helping build that trust to make sure that our data is our most trusted asset.
I love that. So, in an agribusiness, how is it that in the culture of the company, it sounds like it's coming from the top down, that this just been decided that data is really going to be an important piece of the company culture. To create a job for Master Data Governance Manager, like you say, it's great that it's a new role. Why did the company decide to go in that direction?
So I think it was in line with a lot of the transformation that's happening at the moment. It is, like I said, around innovation, modernization. A lot of it is tech focused, which obviously also, as you can imagine, is AI focused and analytical. So with implementing a new ERP system of the scale that we are, I think it was understood that that data is that foundational layer and we need to make sure we get that right. So it's very refreshing to have come into an organization where you have that support. And that's, it's not an uphill battle, as I'm sure a lot of data governance managers would have experienced before.
And can you tell me, how do you, so you've kind of given us a sense of how you work with data, but what kind of data are you working with in your job?
So, yeah, we have close to 100 master data objects across our system. So a lot of my work right now is alongside implementing. So merging legacy systems into a new ERP, which is why governance is so important. So I'm spending a lot of time working with the business to understand how data is used today in legacy systems, how we interpret the data differently across different parts of the business. As I mentioned, the business has a lot of different areas, and in each part of the business may currently interpret their data quite differently. We need to understand what needs to be consistent in the future. So really what that has meant is defining standards, clarifying roles, but also making sure that governance will be either is now or in the future will be embedded into the way people work. So not as an added layer of red tape, but we're really trying to have that that enablement come through as we roll out this new system.
So to help me understand here too, when you think agriculture, you're thinking food and crops, and what is it that you're tracking, and how is it improving the business? Like,
So
help us understand the industry a little bit too.
Yeah, so within the supply chain network, you have everything from, customer and supplier master data. We have material master data. There'll be asset management master data, quality management master data. So we have a lot of different domains under that master data banner. And within that, legacy state is that we do have different legacy systems. So there's a lot of standardization and clarification that needs to happen as we merge into one new system. But ultimately, it can lead to, if our master data is not right, it can impact everything from customer orders to being incorrect, formulations being incorrect. Obviously, that would then mean that things like reporting and insights are incorrect. So we really are just trying to build standardization, clarity, and really just building that trust that everyone can be confident that we trust our master data, because that's at the foundation. All of our operational tasks that happen are driven by that, which then where all of our reporting comes from, and our data informed decisions come off the back of that as well.
I love how one of the oldest industries is being so forward thinking and in its data management, and
Yes.
is so far advanced beyond a lot of new companies in their data.
Like I said, I've been very lucky that I haven't faced the same uphill battle that I know a lot of data governance professionals have faced and continue to face, even though I do believe it's rising. I am very grateful that has not been one of the challenges thus far.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I bet you just the amount of legacy systems is just incredible.
Yes,
So, and
absolutely.
handling those transformations, so, love it. Sounds like a lot of fun. um, so tell me, okay, so let's back it up a little bit and talk about how you got into this role. Um, Tell me, Karina, is this what you wanted to be when you grew up? Like when you were 6 years old? Say, what was the dream? Like, did you think to yourself, I am going to grow up and be a master data governance manager? Or what was the dream?
Not at all. You know what? For a long time, I assumed data careers were only for people who are really analytical in a traditional sense. And um, what I see is that real leverage in data and a lot of data careers is it sits in that strategic thinking. So understanding how things fit together, how the people work, how the organization changes. And how data affects all that. So what I eventually realized is that there's a lot of different spaces in the data world for that more strategic thinking. And you don't have to, live in spreadsheets or coding all day to work with data. You can work with it by shaping how it's understood and how it's used. And I think that's something that I've had to change my mindset around, because if you asked me probably even 10 years ago, I would have said, oh my gosh, I can't work with data. That like I don't have that analytical kind of mindset.
Oh, very nice. Well, what was the dream when you were 6 year old? What did you want to be when you grew up? Where,
I wanted to be a librarian, and I
oh,
think
yeah.
it's almost funny because it's not dissimilar to, we're classifying, we're standardizing, we're creating some uniformity and some sense in all these messy fields and data objects. So yeah, it's not that dissimilar to what I wanted to do when I think about it.
It's not. No, I have met a lot of professional librarians who have transitioned into the world of data.
Ah,
The original data
yeah.
catalog, right?
Yep. Yep.
um, so then, okay. So tell me, as you started maturing and started getting into studies and really being intentional about what you studied, where did you start? Where did your passions start to evolve into?
So for me, it was really around, I started my career in transactional finance based roles and eventually moved into process excellence, where I studied and facilitated a lot of design thinking workshops with stakeholders. So that was really around helping people start to think about the real problem that needs to be solving, right? And this is something we see in data a lot. The data's broken, that data's wrong. Often the data's not the problem. There's it goes a lot wider than that. So that's probably the first taste I had of moving into that strategic thinking space and trying to really understand problems. And then I eventually moved into change management within system implementation. So again, you know, using a lot of my experience in a transactional and finance operational space, but understanding as we implement new systems, how we need to manage that change. So, my experience hasn't been linear, but I've somehow always found myself working closely to system and transformation programs. So that's why when this opportunity came up to step into a data governance role that is in such a large scale system transformation, it made sense because I feel like it's the perfect opportunity to work at that intersection of people, process, and technology, which has almost kind of bundled up all of my experience, and it's been a really great opportunity.
Yeah, it is a lot. We talk about it a lot in this podcast about how a good chunk of the data jobs are about people and about communication.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and I think that is something that is becoming more. People are understanding that a bit more, that a lot of work within data doesn't have to be technical. It's obviously there is a great need for technical expertise, but the enablement piece of people and the change management and the process, refining the processes is equally as important as the technical side of working with the data.
Mhm. So like you say, you really started from the beginning. You were working with data.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you really been working with data your whole career.
yeah, just in very different ways, which again is quite interesting, and I think it's probably just proof that there's very different paths that you can take to get into data roles. And again, quite ignorantly, if you asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have thought that they're highly technical roles that need a lot of formal education behind them in that data space before you could move into one. But I actually think a lot of people have transferable skills that are really missing in the data world.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So tell me then, what's been your biggest lesson so far in your career?
I think just realizing that I don't need to be an expert in the room to add value. So again, earlier on, I really strived. I thought credibility came from having all the answers, but I'm a huge believer in knowing your own strengths. And what I've learned is that my real strength is connecting the dots. So, again, understanding the business, the people, the systems, and understanding that all well enough to ask the right questions, which surface the true problem, not just what people assume the problem to be. So, I kind of always joke that being a generalist has actually been an advantage, especially in these transformation roles, because the problems usually don't sit neatly packaged up in one domain. You've really got to have the capability to draw that out. And a lot of that comes from being curious, trying to understand the business, the people, the systems to really, build that trust and that, I guess, that understanding to be able to, you know, surface the real problem. Because I think that's, that's one of the biggest things that end users get frustrated with in dealing with us as data professionals, is that we don't understand their true needs, or they feel like we're not hearing them. And I think that's a big piece.
Visit dataversity.net and expand your knowledge with thousands of articles and blogs written by industry experts, plus free live and on-demand webinars covering the complete data management spectrum. While you're there, subscribe to the weekly newsletter so you'll never miss a beat.
Yeah, we talk a lot about it, that in the podcast, and I've mentioned it several times. When we started this podcast, it was really just to show the diverse paths into data. I mean, as you say, there's no linear path, and so much. There's so many different ways to get into it. So many different areas of data management. Some technical, some not technical. Like you say, there's the traditional analyst role, but there's so many more jobs related to data and ways to manage it. But the commonality that I didn't know I would find in all the data practitioners is that curiosity.
Yes.
And there is this deep-seated curiosity and just being open and wanting to figure out and solve that problem, no matter which way you go. And I love that. And I love that you point out that lesson of you don't have to know everything and you don't have to have all the answers.
Yes. Yep. Be curious, first and foremost, I think is the biggest key for me. Is if you don't know, as long as you come from a place of curiosity and wanting to understand, you'd struggle to find people that aren't going to be there to support you, to help you understand.
Have you always been curious, or has there been ways that you've nurtured that curiosity and helped, or just, was it just experience, or did you go seek training, or ways to improve, how you...
Yeah, look, I think I'm a very curious person, and I've been very lucky to have mentors throughout probably the last 10 to 15 years of my career that I'm a huge advocate for mentorship, especially as a woman in the workplace and where women might be working in some areas that are traditionally male dominated. But I think that has been one of the key messages I've had from mentors, is that continuous learning piece. And that goes, your personal development learning, but also your professional development learning. And so for me, it's very much around understanding, or trying to understand what I don't know, and then dive into that and build on that. And it has to be something that you're obviously interested in as well, because there have been avenues where I've tried to understand things that, if it's not sparking joy in you, it's going to be a challenge. And it's not to say we all don't have to dive into some areas that aren't quite the most enjoyable for us. But I think it's find what you enjoy learning about. And that to me helps drive curiosity as well.
Absolutely. Tell me, I mean, Karina, you've been, again, working with data, your whole career in one way or another. So what is your definition of data?
I would say it's a shared business language. It's how different parts of, I've often worked with large organizations. So it's how different parts of the organizations read from the same page in the same book. And that ensures that they can make data-informed decisions. When you think of it as language, if the language isn't consistent or well understood, you'll see anything from misalignment to poor financial decisions being made because they don't understand that language/data. So, good data governance is really about making sure we're all speaking the same language, especially as our organizations look towards the use of AI.
I know it sounds like a silly question, but, it's the question I get asked all the time. How does that improve the ROI of the company? How does that improve revenue, or how does that decrease costs? Do you have some examples of that? I mean, how does it help? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's when we invest in AI, it's, there are some low cost AI tools, but a lot of the time organizations are spending a lot of money in the development of analytic tools and AI. But a lot of that, well, I would say nearly all of that, has to be driven by by data, by some key data that our business uses. And if we aren't certain that we're all talking the same language and we're all using the same data, that means that a lot of these tools that we might implement, and we've seen it, I've seen it in other organizations, I'm sure any data professional would tell you they've seen where a lot of money is spent to implement a new system or a tool or a platform or a software, and it doesn't give the result that they thought. And a lot of the time, that stems back to not necessarily that the data is wrong, but maybe the understanding of the data wasn't clear, or the use of the data wasn't known, or some complexities around the data wasn't surfaced until it was too late. So I think that's why if we look at data as a language and make sure that, one of the pieces I'm working on is a business glossary for our key master data fields. This is what this means. So whether it's someone in our supply chain, whether it's someone in a automation and analytics team, whether it's someone from a compliance point of view, if they want to understand what do we mean when we say a customer, they have a very clear definition that we've, as an organization, all the stakeholders have agreed for each and every data term. What is it? What do we mean when we're saying that? So if you want to use that to drive some sort of automation or analytics or artificial intelligence, we're really clear from the get-go what we're actually expecting that data object to. Basically, what is that data object? We're really clear on that.
And thank you for sharing that. Again, it's so funny because, especially, as you say, I mean, so many companies have invested in AI and not invested in the data that's going into it.
Yeah.
And that common language does make such a big difference. We went through that exercise as a company, so in one company meeting, I'm like, okay, so everyone give me your definition of customer. What's a DataVersity customer?
Yeah. And you think something as customer is yeah. I mean, a customer is a customer. Surely that's not too controversial, right? Well, yeah, you often find it when you start asking the question. It's actually even the most simple of data terms actually, stir up a lot of emotion, a lot of opinions with different parts of the business. So yeah, I think it's something that is becoming evident across across a lot of organizations now that they really need to have that definition of their data clear before they can go and invest in any sort of AI or automation going forward.
Yeah, it's a fun exercise. Everyone's like, oh yeah, we understand that, but when you start doing it.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So tell me, do you see the importance of data management and the number of jobs working with data increasing or decreasing over the next 10 years, and why?
Look, I think without question, that these roles will increase, as I said, as organizations invest in new systems and analytics and automation, the need for trusted and well-governed data needs to become foundational. I think what is changing is the nature of these roles. So we need fewer technical data gatekeepers and more people who can enable the business to use data confidently and responsibly.
I agree. What advice then would you give to people looking to get into a career in data management in any aspect?
Just to say, don't underestimate the value of understanding how your business actually works. I think that is something that I've always taken pride in when I join organizations. I really like to understand the business, and I think that's where you can really add value. You don't need to be the most technical person in the room, but I think helping understanding how your business operates, the nuances in your business, I think that's where you're really going to add value. And, if you ask good questions and you communicate clearly, and if you help connect data to real decisions, you'll be incredibly valuable. And especially during, periods of transformation and system changes and implementation of AI and whatnot. I think they're almost the soft skills. I think that in my opinion are becoming less soft and more important. And I think if you can nail those, I think you'd have a career in data management that far surpasses what you'd learn just building those technical skills. I think you need to have them hand in hand.
That's great advice. I love it so much. And you talked a little bit too about you were lucky to have some great mentors along the way. I just want to ask, did you find those mentors naturally, or did you go seeking mentors? Did you join a formal program?
So early on in my career, it was through formalized programs.
Hmm.
But I guess as I've grown and gained confidence, um, I'm certainly not opposed now to reaching out to people within the business who I believe can, we can have a mutual. It could be, it can benefit us both to have a connection there, and that might look like leaders from other parts of the business that would like to understand a little bit more about what I'm working on in the data governance space. And likewise, I want to understand what they're working on. But what I find is that you connect with the right people, and you just it's just such a wealth of knowledge, and that network has opened a lot of opportunities for me as well. Certainly, that's not the reason that you would engage with a mentor in the first case, but I think don't be afraid to just reach out to people. I mean, if it's your first mentor, I'd probably encourage a formalized program, because it gives you a bit of structure and guidelines in terms of how to engage with a mentor, what to expect from them as a mentee, what your responsibility is in the relationship. But I think as you progress through your career as well, most people are more than happy to have, even if it's an informal mentorship with you. And I've now been lucky enough to, I guess, pay that favor back and act as an informal mentor to some other people coming up in the organization as well.
That's very nice. I love that you're giving back. Oh, Karina, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you today and to learn your story and learn about what you're doing.
Thank you for having me. I love listening to the podcast, and I've learned so much. And it can be quite a data governance, especially, can be quite an isolating part of the data world to operate in. Sometimes we're not people's favorite people, although I am trying to change that that perception. But it is really nice to listen to other data professionals and hear about their career and some of the challenges they've overcome. So thank you for yourself and DATAVERSITY for the great work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And that is so nice to hear that it's always nice to hear that it's being used and valued. So thank you very much. Really appreciate that. And hopefully we can, and this particular podcast can influence even more people and help bring more people to the world of data. So, but Karina, thank you so much. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, like if people want to learn more about GrainCorp or, about what you do, where would they go?
So GrainCorp, if you just Google GrainCorp, you'll find a lot of information about them. Their website is very comprehensive. Otherwise, happy to people connect with me on LinkedIn if it's data governance specific questions, or always love hearing people's experiences, sharing knowledge as well. So more than happy for anyone to reach out.
Thank you for that. And we'll include that on the podcast page so everybody has that link. Well,
Perfect.
Again, Karina, thank you so much for today.
No, thank you for having me. It was lovely to chat.
Indeed. And to all of our listeners out there, if you'd like to keep up to date in the latest podcasts and the latest in data management education, you may go to dataversity.net/subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, everyone. Thank you for listening to DATAVERSITY Talks, a podcast brought to you by DATAVERSITY. Subscribe to our newsletter for podcast updates and information about our free educational webinars at dataversity.net/subscribe.